So let's talk about insight. First of all, what is insight? Broadly speaking, it's basically letting people know that you are like deep. And granted, I want people to know that I'm like deep, but more importantly, I want other people, in particular your college admission reader, know that you are like deep. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you 10 different ways to do that. First, why is insight important? Katie Sweeney, who used to work at Reed College, once said to me, the best way that she knows a student is college ready is if they can answer the question, so what, in the essay. So quick pro tip, the best way to bring insight into your essay is to answer the question, so what? So what? So what? And I hope by the end of this video, you've got a little Ethan in your head going, so what? Because basically, these are gonna be 10 ways to answer the question, so what? Now, there are two specific qualities that we're gonna be looking for here. Number one, we're gonna try and surprise the reader, because I think that's one of the most important qualities when it comes to insight, is saying something that we didn't necessarily expect you to say. But when it comes to the personal statement, another important quality is how do we segue to our values? Because that's what college admission officers want to know, is what are those values and also those skills and qualities that you're going to bring with you to the college campus. So here's a quick 1-minute test that's going to help me help you start to recognize values. I'm going to read this paragraph to you, and I want you to see if you can spot 3 or 4 different values. Here goes. Nothing teaches patience, okay, that was an easy one, like trying to catch 22 rogue quail in your backyard. I incubated 32 quail eggs, and every day I dedicated my afternoons to watching the eggs, checking the water levels, and making sure the temperature was okay. In the days leading up to the expected hatch date, I sat there, face centimeters away from the glass, talking to them and waiting for any signs of movement. How you doing so far? Once they did hatch, taking care of them wasn't easy, and I had to learn a lot about how they acted. I've taken these traits of patience and adaptability into other areas of my life. For example, in crew, creating the ideal set in a boat takes 8 people working in perfect unison, and this is rarely the case. Learning how to love crew for what it is took time. Pause the video if you need to, and you can reread this. How many values can you spot? I spot a bunch in here. I see patience, I see adaptability, I see meticulousness, lots of things, and you probably spotted others. The reason I wanted to start with values is it's going to be a theme or thread throughout these 10 tips. So the first way to bring insight into your essay is to try to think of the opposite of what someone else might say. And this often works by brainstorming sort of the cliche version of what you think someone would say in a particular situation and then going, could the opposite be true? So instead of saying, for example, I learned that my body is capable of more than I'd originally thought, which is a pretty common sentiment, maybe you learned that by pushing your body too hard, you actually needed to focus on rest or self-care, which is like, didn't expect you to say that. Especially if the essay is about hardworking, like maybe it's about teamwork. And you actually say, you know what, in pushing towards teamwork, I actually realized, there are some situations where teamwork is not actually best. And I actually need the one to be making the call, making the decision. Or maybe instead of saying, I learned that clarity and decisiveness were key, maybe you discover that sometimes it's valuable to sit with ambiguity and actually not know the answer. A second way to bring insight into your essay is to try shifting from one value to another. So what does that sound like? Something like this. I learned that in my desire to keep things stable, so that's maybe about security, I'd actually been playing it a little safe, and what I needed in my life was a little more adventure. Or I learned that in some cases being completely honest, value of honesty, is not always best or kind, and that timing and tone are key. So you notice what's happening there? The author's starting talking about one particular thing, and then you can do this by mentally pushing this to an extreme and asking, okay, is there a situation where maybe this isn't necessarily best? And then shifting to what else might be good? In some cases, yeah, it might be the opposite, but in some cases, it's like something else that might surprise us. Another way to bring insight into your essay, and this is one of my favorite ones, is about redefining a value. So what do I mean by this? We sometimes conceptualize these values in particular ways. Like we think of leadership as being like a particular thing, but maybe as you've gone through your experiences, you've realized leadership is actually about something else. And you can share what that something else is in just a couple sentences. So here's a quick example. I realized that leadership didn't really mean simply seeing what I thought was the best course of action for people to take and pushing them to take it. Instead, real leadership involved making myself obsolete, creating a space for others to step into and supporting them until they no longer needed me. Ooh, goosebumps. That gives us a sense that this student is really thinking through this and going, wait, yes, sometimes leadership involves pushing others, but sometimes isn't it about something else? And so one thing you can ask yourself is there some other like secret sauce or element that maybe people don't always think about, but that you've thought about when it comes to defining a particular value. Just so you have it, here's one more example. I realized community was more than the people whose names I knew. It was the bus driver I'd say hello to each morning, the street cleaner I'd never met. Even my neighbor's pets were part of my extended community. So there are two techniques, two ways of doing this. In the first example, leadership, yes, it's about this, but it's also about this kind of like hidden specific thing. In this case, community, it wasn't just about this, it was actually zooming out. So in some cases, you can kind of zoom in to find your insight. In some cases, you might want to zoom out to think more broadly about whatever the value is that you're describing. A fourth way to bring insight into your essay is to connect to something that we totally didn't expect you to connect with, but just briefly. So here's a quick example. In boxing, patience is everything. One well-placed uppercut is worth 20 small jabs. Now, notice again the value is emphasized here, the value of patience. Take a look at what he connects it to. And this idea, to avoid the low-hanging fruit in favor of a better opportunity, has guided how I approach emceeing. So emceeing meaning like, being a host, having the microphone, speaking at events and stuff. And the connection there, again, is on patience. So the simple way to do this is to think about, okay, what is this value and how has it served me in this one particular area of my life? Probably connected to like one of the main themes of your personal statement. And then going, where have I applied this elsewhere in a way that might be a little bit more unconventional? And you just have to mention it briefly. If you want to go on another sentence or two, that's fine. But really, this is just a quick, here's how I've applied this thing to other areas of my life. And the value of this is colleges can see, okay, this is a value that the student has really internalized and learned to apply in other areas of their life. The fifth way is the zoom out. And it's relevant to something that I mentioned before, but basically you're gonna pick a specific example of something and then you're gonna zoom out and suggest how this specific example is actually a representative example, meaning this is a way that you move through life. So, quick example. In the time since, I've realized gefilte fish, which is a stuffed seafood concoction, is more than just the unfamiliar food tucked away in my great-grandma's fridge. It represents the opportunities that arise from trying new things. So what I like about this is that he's actually zooming out, right? He talks about gefilte fish, which is this thing that he was nervous to try, but then he tried it and he's like, you know what? Yeah, that was actually not so bad. And experimenting, trying new things is actually relevant in other areas of my life. And then of course, in the essay, which you can read below this video, you'll see how he gives different examples of how trying new things has actually served him well. And so again, you pick a specific example and you think, how is this representative of other areas of my life? The sixth way to bring insight into your essay is to teach me something. And I love when students do this. Teach me to see, for example, how something simple maybe isn't as simple as I might think. So, quick example. While for some people, blue jeans may just be a reliable pair of pants, for me, knowing their history, they represent fashion's ability to speak about class in America. Boom, now that's kind of another zoom out moment, right? But you can potentially teach your reader something, especially, as I like to say, if you know some stuff about some stuff. Now here's another quick example, just so you know what I'm talking about. LOL, you're not Harry Styles, upper left corner, which is a sticker in the student's essay. Bought in 7th grade and transferred from my old laptop, this sticker is torn but persevering with layers of tape. Now, I might initially kind of think, well, that's kind of cheesy or it's kind of superficial. Despite conveying my fangirly infatuation with Harry Styles' boy band, One Direction, for me, Styles embodies an artist activist who uses his privilege for the betterment of society. Okay, I didn't know that. Tell me more. As a $42K donor to the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, a hair donor to the Little Princess Trust, and promoter of LGBTQ+ equality, he, I'm underlining this part, has motivated me to be a more public activist instead of internalizing my beliefs. So you might think, Harry Styles, One Direction, who's gonna write about that in their college essay? But this student actually goes, you know what? There's something specific about him that you may not know, and it's inspired me in this really particular way. So again, you're picking something simple or potentially superficial and talking about why it's not super simple or why it's not superficial. Again, we're connecting to a value that has some personal significance to you, and hopefully it surprises us. A seventh way to bring insight into your essay is to have a realization about something that you were initially wrong about. This is going to show some vulnerability, and it's going to give us a sense that, you're a critical thinker, someone who's willing to potentially change their beliefs if given evidence that would allow them to basically make a new decision or, see things in a different way. So check this out. I realized that in searching for others' approval, I had given away my autonomy, and that if I wanted to live a truly free life, I had to respect other people's right to an opinion but not live by them. Now, I love this one. When a student answers the question, so what, in a way that feels insightful, there's a little there's two things that's happening. One is I'm getting excited as I read it, and I'm also there's a part of me that's relaxing, something that's locking into place. That's what you're going for here, y'all. With all these different techniques, you're basically trying to revise until you find something that feels that feels fresh, that feels new. An eighth way to bring insight into your essay is to embody paradox. What is a paradox? It's when one thing and another thing don't go together, but they kind of do and reveal a deeper truth. That's my description of a paradox. Another way to talk about this is when two things that seemingly collide actually reveal some deeper value. Quick example. I'm Catholic. Sunday mornings always spent at church. The private Catholic middle and high schools, each with masses for special occasions. Baptism, Eucharist, and confirmation. Praying before each meal and saying, "Go away in the name of Jesus," to nighttime horrors. Theology classes and realizing there's so much more to religion than faith. Having something to believe in. Questioning what you believe in. Turning to God when I see the horrors in the world and getting no response. So I just want to highlight that part. Having something to believe in and questioning what you believe in. This is a beautiful paradox because it's possible to have something to believe in, but also question it. That's a paradox, right? These two values, these two things can actually coexist. And the fact that the student has put in, yes, these two things are true for me, shows us his ability to live with these opposites. That's vulnerable, and it shows that he's complex, as you are as well. A ninth way is to find a phrase that has a cool or interesting double meaning. So it applies in one way, and then when you think about it, it's also kind of relates to this other thing. And this is kind of hard to do, but let me give you a quick example. 3 days a week, my great-grandfather Pop brought home ribs. After dinner, he'd go around the table inspecting each plate, making sure each rib was stripped down to the bone. If you found one morsel, you couldn't be excused. Pop believed that before you could leave the table, you had to finish your ribs. Now notice he ends the paragraph with that phrase, finish your ribs. So it kind of echoes in our minds. And pro tip, if you're going to use this technique, whatever the phrase is, see if you can end your sentence or end your paragraph with the phrase. But notice what he does in the next paragraph. This lesson has stuck with me. Whether I'm staying up until 2 a.m. to figure out the radius of convergence of a power series, that's what I call geeky language, which is signaling to the reader that you know some stuff about some stuff, or identifying solutions to countless concerns issued by my school district, I strive to finish my ribs. See what he's doing there? So it's kind of like a play on words. It's finish my ribs, yes, in its literal sense, but also finishing my ribs, which shows this other quality of finishing what I started and how it relates to other sides of me. So you can see that some of these different techniques are going to kind of overlap, but the point here is to answer so what in a dynamic way that hopefully surprises us. Finally, you can drop in a surprise connection to your career. Now, by the way, I don't think you have to put in your career to your personal statement, but if you happen to know what your career is and you want to kind of work it in there, you can do it. Here's what that might look like. My trustworthy 5-year-old laptop sits in the center of the desk. From accompanying me on my ventures to track null pointer errors in my apps, to playing classic Billy Joel after a rough day, my laptop is my first choice vehicle as I drive through a life of curiosity. Notice the value. Whether executing my simulations of stress analysis tests, teaching me how to make an origami lily, or showing me a TED Talk on why people find it difficult to poop away from home, my laptop has allowed me to find different versions of myself. Though I'll probably call myself an engineer someday, my heart is in so many different places. See what he did there? So he's about to talk to us about all the different places where he finds his heart and his, things he's curious about. But he basically says, I'm going to be an engineer. And oh, by the way, engineers are curious people. So again, you don't have to put your career in there, but if you want to, why not work it in? All right, so what I want you to do right now is I want you to go into your essay, assuming you've written a draft already, and I want you to highlight potential moments where you could answer so what in a slightly more dynamic or surprising way, okay? So go to especially at the ends of each paragraph, just basically highlight it and go, so what? And see if you can answer the question, so what, in a way that might surprise us using one of these 10 techniques, okay? And it might take you a couple sentences to figure it out, especially if you're writing, but eventually you're gonna hit on some. Awesome, I hope you found that useful. I've got tons more videos, some of them are linked below, some of them are on the website, and yeah, have an awesome week.